On the freezing, blizzard-swept 8th floor of the tower, a massive army of players stands at attention, and who's giving the big, heroic speech? None other than Kojo Itsuki, the rank 6 leader of the Blue Zone Guild. He rallies the troops, announcing their grand mission to defeat the unconquered Floor Guardian. With all the authority of a true leader, he warns them not to get sloppy. After all, if they can't even clear this floor, reaching the 9th will be nothing more than a pipe dream. What a motivational guy. Just as Kyojo finishes his big speech, he spots the final arrivals. It's none other than the legendary Blue Eyes Guild. The crowd parts for their leader, the man himself, Narugami Subaru. Kyojo greets his supposed best friend with a warm handshake, all smiles and jokes. He smugly notes that Subaru's presence attracted other powerful players, probably just hoping to pick up the scraps. Speaking of scraps, Kyojo's hand tightens around a dagger hidden at his waist. Yep, what a trustworthy pile. This partnership is definitely going to end well. As they shake hands, Subaru slips a glowing artifact into Kyojo's palm. The trader is stunned to find it's a one of a kind legendary Edom Archangel's blessing, a priceless get-out-of-jail-free card. Subaru casually calls it an insurance policy for the raid. He then invites his old friend to rejoin the Blue Eyes Guild after their victory, telling him he can just return the item then. When Kyojo stays silent, Subaru pats his shoulder, saying he can keep the super rare gift if he's not interested. What a flex. Before Kyojo can even process this legendary level flex, the real party starts. The ground shakes, and the 8th floor guardian makes its grand entrance, a multi-headed poison dragon Hydra. As everyone else scrambles and Kyojo shouts attack orders, Subaru just looks bored. He casually calls the giant monster troublesome and disgusting. Golden lightning then surges around his body, and with a glowing blue eye visible through his mask, he calmly informs the dragon that today will be its death anniversary. The monster is not amused. One of the Hydra's heads charges up a nasty looking breath attack, prompting Kyojo to shout a brilliant tactical order, run away. But our boy Subaru has other plans. He simply unsheathes his blade, informing the panicked crowd that evasive maneuvers are totally unnecessary. As Kyojo wonders what he's talking about, the dragon fires its toxic laser beam. The attack barrels forward, only to collide with an equally massive blast of Subaru's golden lightning. The resulting explosion blasts everyone else off their feet while Subaru just stands there, tanking it like a champ. As the dust settles from the massive explosion, Subaru's new party is completely stunned. One of them gushes that his training clearly paid off, which is the understatement of the century. Rena-san pulls him aside, asking what he gave to Itsuki. Our boy just says she'll find out later and asks if she's ready. He rallies his troops, declaring it's time to take down the dragon and break through the 8th floor. As they charge forward, a conflicted Kyojo watches from the sidelines, quietly noting how well they all get along. We get a quick trip down memory lane to a much colder, more treacherous time. Kyojo smirks, telling some shady-looking allies that his plan is going perfectly. You mean the plan to get your best friend taken out? Real classy. His hooded companion prays for their success. Back in the present, Subaru's new crew is fighting for their own victory. They move in perfect sync, dodging the Hydra's massive attacks while landing precise strikes. They aren't just fighting a boss, they're putting on a clinic for Kyojo to watch. As the battle against the Hydra rages, Chi scolds a new combatant for attacking without warning. But her teammate Tashiya, cloaked in menacing red energy, just grins and says that's how it always is. Suddenly, a participant named Shuhei Suya blasts the monster with ice, screaming that no one understands his feelings. Great, a new challenger, and he's got baggage. Seeing an opening for a good old-fashioned damage contest, Tashiya dares him to see whose power is higher. He unleashes a devastating series of crimson slashes on the Hydra's head. Toshiya blitzes the Hydra with a whirlwind of dual dagger strikes. He gives Chi a token apology for his solo act, but she waves it off. She tells him to keep attacking while she throws up a massive pink energy shield to block the Hydra's retaliation. Just as everyone thinks they're a well-oiled machine, Toshiya gets a creepy grin. He slips behind the distracted mage and asks if her shield can stop him. A blade at her throat provides the grim answer. Teamwork is officially dead. With a blade at her throat, Toshiya scoffs that showing off is what gets people in trouble. This betrayal triggers a painful memory for Subaru, throwing him back 20 years to the day his own world ended. He remembers Kyojo, his supposed best friend, standing over their fallen comrades with a chilling smirk. As a younger wounded Subaru lay on the ground, Kyojo coldly ordered him not to look away. Back in the present, Subaru's blue eye glows with rage. The scene before him is a perfect, ugly copy of his past. The universe apparently got bored one day and dropped a giant tower into the middle of everything. It then sent out a galaxy-wide spam message. You have been chosen. The mysterious invite tells everyone to climb and prepare for some vague event called the beginning. Nobody knows what it is, who sent it, or why. But the command is irresistible. So, folks from Earth Murim, and who knows, where else just start climbing like cosmic lemmings. The result of this endless climb, usually a snowy wasteland and a very unhappy-looking ice dragon. Back in the snowy wasteland of his memory, a younger Subaru is in bad shape. System windows pop up. cheerfully informing him that he's poisoned, exhausted, and about to log off from life permanently. He glares up at Kyojo, demanding to know why his supposed best friend would do this. Kyojo launches into a classic villain monologue, explaining this ambush was the only way to win. He rants about how everything Subaru gave him was a form of torture, forcing him to choose the world over their friendship. With that, the betrayal was complete. Kyojo tries to be comforting, which is a bit rich coming from the guy holding the pointy thing. He tells Subaru not to be sad since his entire Blue Eyes guild is getting wiped out with him anyway. But even on his last legs, Subaru has an ace up his sleeve. He pulls out a legendary fan, shocking Kyojo. Ignoring the traitor's questions, Subaru activates the item. A massive gale erupts, launching his 4 surviving comrades far away to safety. As Kyojo's men prepare to give chase, Subaru defiantly declares they're going nowhere. Running on pure spite and a nearly maxed out fatigue bar, Subaru decides to go out with a bang. A system warning flashes that his Lord of Thunder skill is on a timer, but he couldn't care less. Golden energy explodes from him, stopping the army cold. The commander just smirks, calling Subaru persistent before asking if he's ready to pay the ultimate price. Through grit teeth, Subaru declares that nobody is leaving without his permission. Annoyed that their plans are ruined, the grunts finally charge and a storm of blades and energy erupts. Even while being swarmed, Subaru has complete faith in his comrades, knowing they won't fall to some small fry soldiers. The only real threat would be a certain Yoshiki, but that's a problem for later. Right now, his fatigue is at 97%, and he can't afford to waste time. Despite his skill, the sheer number of opponents is overwhelming. After taking several serious hits, he finally slumps to the ground. A soldier foolishly starts celebrating their victory, but Subaru glares up, his eyes glowing as he asks who exactly they think they just took down. A soldier foolishly starts to lecture the fallen Subaru, telling him he should know his place. But Subaru isn't listening. He musters every last drop of his strength for one final, defiant scream, declaring that he will be the one who wins. Watching from a safe distance, Kyojo offers some crocodile tears and mock condolences. He activates a defensive item, smugly certain that his Archangel's protection will keep him safe. A massive, golden blade of pure energy then descends, shocking the grunts who realize their fight is far from over. After his dramatic final stand, Subaru's consciousness is rudely yanked into the overwhelming stench of garbage. He awakens, not in some glorious afterlife, but stuffed inside a trash can in a filthy alley. Wondering if this is hell, a pathetic status screen for a level 1 weakling named Hozoikyu appears before him. As if on cue, some passing bullies mention the legendary Narugami died 20 years ago. The news hits Subaru like a truck. He's not dead, he's in someone else's body. Naturally, he panics and face plants onto the pavement. After his little pavement tasting session, Subaru finds a handy device called a P-player. Thinking fast, he searches for his old guild, Blue Eyes. The search results are just insulting. It seems his traitorous ex-buddy, Kyojo Itsuki, started a copycat guild called Blue Zone and has been riding Subaru's coattails for 2 decades. The sight of Kyojo's smug face triggers a painful memory of the snake promising to always be his shadow. A promise he technically kept, just with more betrayal and unfortunate workplace accidents than Subaru was expecting. Subaru's search leads him to an unexpected discovery, the Narugami-Q Memorial Hall. Yes, a whole building dedicated to him being very, very gone. He heads over and is honestly impressed by the fancy architecture. Inside, it's a full-blown museum to his past glory, with holographic monuments and crowds of people paying their respects. They remember him as a hero, a legend who almost conquered the tower. As he's processing this weird tribute, some guy snidely remarks that being the hero who almost made it just means he's accomplished nothing for 20 years. Just as Subaru is processing the insult, a giant hologram of the traitor himself, Kyojo Itsuki flickers to life. He's feeding the crowd some PR garbage about how he and the comrades built this hall to remember Subaru forever. Kyojo then has the nerve to claim his knockoff guild carries the noble spirit of the original Blue Eyes. The sheer audacity makes Subaru's blood boil. Apparently, ending his life wasn't enough. Kyojo had to steal his entire legacy too. Fueled by a fresh wave of rage, Subaru vows to rewrite this fake history himself. Subaru clenches his fist, swearing he won't let them pull a stunt like that ever again. This second chance is too valuable to waste. Just as he's getting fired up, a commotion nearby breaks his focus. He turns to see some guy on the ground with another person offering a helping hand. The seemingly innocent scene triggers a memory so sharp it makes him freeze. He's not just watching a scuffle, he's reliving his own final moments. The vision of his traitor smirking down at him flashes in his mind, mockingly telling him not to be sad. The memory of Kyojo's final words suddenly makes a sick kind of sense. The traitor had promised he'd remain a hero, and now Subaru sees the twisted result. This entire memorial is a sham, a grand performance so Kyojo could hijack his legacy and claim the Blue Eyes Guild for himself. As Subaru processes the sheer nerve of it all, his powers begin to spark uncontrollably over the memorial flowers. Just as his rage peaks, someone in the crowd violently shoves him aside, snapping him back to reality. A random guy shoves Subaru, yelling at him to wait in line. Apparently, cutting the queue at your own memorial is a major social crime. The push sends Subaru sprawling into the flower display. As his hand grazes a chrysanthemum, it suddenly glows with a familiar blue energy, but it's not his. He recognizes the power signature instantly. It belongs to his old comrade Asagiri Shigeru. Meanwhile, on a rooftop nearby, two mysterious cloaked figures discuss their yearly visit. One complains about all the sneaking around, clearly fed up with the annual tradition. The mysterious man on the rooftop pulls back his hood, revealing himself as Asagiri Shigeru. With a sly grin, he tells his companion you can never be too sure. He still holds out hope that Subaru might see the flowers he offered. His friend, however, has clearly run out of patience, questioning if he seriously believes Subaru is alive. Shigeru's reasoning is simple: he never saw a body. This earns him an earful. As his friend points out, they've been hunted for 20 years. Back on the ground, Subaru is reeling. The glowing flower wasn't a trick. It's undeniable proof Shigeru is alive. Back in his not-so-glamorous room, Subaru gets to work. He tries to look up his old guild, Blue Eyes, but finds absolutely nothing. It seems Kyojo has been very busy erasing history. Still, one thing is certain: Shigeru is alive. She's just been in hiding for the last 20 years, and Subaru knows exactly why. The traitor wouldn't just let people who know the truth wander around freely. He recalls saving 4 of his comrades in his final moments. But contacting them now, while he's powerless, would be a death sentence for everyone. Subaru knows approaching his old comrade now would be a terrible idea. His current power level is a complete joke. First things first, he needs to get his original strength back. Luckily, the body he's inhabiting has a convenient memory. The tutorial to become a qualified player starts in just 2 days. With a newfound resolve, he's sure they can meet again later. Flash forward to the tutorial exam hall, where the aftermath of battle already litters the ground. An old supervisor with a magnificent beard looks on, completely unimpressed by the display. The exam supervisor, a tough-looking old-timer named Huger, watches one participant barely survive his trial. Huger offers him a chance at the next step, where an extra goblin spawns for better rewards. The guy completely loses it, screaming that there's no way he can fight 3 at once. Fed up with the noise, Huger is about to fail him when Subaru calmly steps forward and accepts the challenge. With a simple, right then, the system generates 2 goblins and the real test begins. Before anyone can even blink, Subaru becomes a blur of motion, zipping past the goblins. Supervisor Huger barely registers something flying past his face. By the time he can process it, 2 goblins are already in pieces on the ground. Internally, Subaru is pretty pleased with himself. His new body has a ton of potential that its last owner completely wasted. The system offers him the next stage, and he impatiently tells it to hurry up. A moment later, a fresh goblin head lands right at Huger's feet, leaving the old man utterly floored. The exam hall floor is now a carpet of defeated goblins, leaving Supervisor Huger utterly baffled. He realizes this kid isn't just swinging wildly, he's playing 4D chess, predicting every attack 3 moves ahead. Huger admits that even for a veteran like him, these movements are impossible. The old man lands on a crazy theory: the only person with this kind of fighting style was the legend himself, Narugami Subaru. As the last goblin is dispatched, a system window confirms it. Step 49 is cleared, and it's time for the final boss. Standing over the last of the defeated goblins, Subaru decides he might as well give an old trick a try. The exam hall floor suddenly trembles as a massive, shadowy hand erupts from the ground. Supervisor Huger, who is just starting to process the last 49 stages, absolutely loses it. He starts screaming that Subaru isn't the real legend and needs to stop immediately if he values his life. But it's way too late for that. The final boss, a giant goblin champion, looms over our hero, ready for a real fight. A system window announces the arrival of the Goblin King, and let's just say it's not happy about its minions being wiped out. Seeing the towering boss, Supervisor Huger completely loses his cool. He screams that this is reckless, a suicide mission, and that no amount of skill can close the massive gap in stats. Subaru looks up at the monster and silently agrees. He knows with his current stats, he probably can't even land a decent hit. Even so, he tightens his grip on his blade and decides he refuses to give up. Facing a mountain of a monster, Subaru's brilliant strategy is to disarm himself. He casually lets his only sword clatter to the ground. From the observation room, Supervisor Huger has a complete meltdown, screaming that the kid has finally lost his mind. As the Goblin King brings its massive axe down, Subaru just flicks a tiny dagger at its leg. The attack barely leaves a scratch, but it's so bizarre that the giant boss stops mid-swing, completely baffled. While it's distracted, Subaru calmly picks up a crude club from a fallen goblin. Just when you thought he was going for a caveman approach with the club, Subaru pulls out a whole set of glowing daggers. With a grin that screams, "I'm about to do something ridiculous." He asks the Goblin King if it's surprised. He then proposes a friendly little bet who can turn the other into a pincushion first. The goblin is not amused and bellows, trying to activate a reflect skill. Too bad for him, Subaru's already launched a volley of projectiles, peppering the giant monster with relentless, precise hits. The Goblin King's reflect skill fizzles out before it even starts. Subaru's ridiculous number of daggers rains down, completely overwhelming the giant monster. The boss tries to shield itself, but it's no use, it gets pummeled by the endless volley of blue projectiles. As Subaru watches his handiwork, his mind flashes back to his training days. A woman, Reina-san, had once called him out on his sloppy throwing technique. With a smirk, she showed him how any object, even a simple pen, could become a deadly weapon once you understood its center of gravity. Reina-san's old lesson echoed in his mind. Once you master an object's center of gravity, even a pen can be a lethal projectile. Back in the present, Subaru's dagger proves her point by landing squarely in the Goblin King's eye. The giant monster roars in agony, stumbling back before finally crashing to the floor. From the control room, Supervisor Huger finally connects the dots. This kid wasn't just a swordsman, he was a combat genius who could pinpoint any weakness. The old man could only stammer that what he was witnessing was beyond genius. With the boss finally down for the count, it's shopping time. Subaru gets his reward points and starts browsing the system shop. He's presented with a classic RPG dilemma. Does he pick the safe and reliable holy sword or a riskier, high-damage magic sword? Neither option feels quite right for a returning legend. He knows his first big purchase is crucial. But then he notices he can scroll down further. Tucked away at the bottom is a weird F-rank skill called Wedge of Greed, which can suppress item side effects. Now, that's interesting. Subaru realizes the bizarre F-rank skill might be the perfect counter to the magic sword's nasty side effects. Deciding to go all in, he buys both Wedge of Greed and the risky, nameless magic sword. A wicked-looking blade appears in his hand, and a quick test swing confirms they work together perfectly. Just then, Supervisor Huger shows up, commending the combo's synergy. But the old examiner can't wrap his head around why anyone would choose such an unknown, inefficient skill. Subaru glares back, annoyed, asking if he really has to explain himself. Subaru's stare is ice cold as he asks if Huger really needs him to explain. The old supervisor gets flustered, trying to play it cool while still fishing for an answer. But Subaru isn't just some rookie. He remembers this guy as a young fanboy who once nervously asked for his autograph. As Huger launches into a classic kids these days rant, Subaru cuts him off with a savage comment about his hair loss. He then bluntly refuses to answer and tells the old man to maintain confidentiality about the exam. Still fuming, Supervisor Huger accuses Subaru of having shallow, internet-level knowledge. He puffs up his chest, ready to teach the kid some manners, but then his eyes go wide with a sudden realization. His whole attitude shifts as he desperately tries to scout Subaru for his geld. Subaru couldn't care less. He gives a one-word refusal and accepts the prompt to move to the next floor. Despite Huger's pleas, Subaru vanishes in a flash of light, reappearing in a bustling fantasy marketplace on the second floor. The old man is left completely stunned. Subaru arrives in the land of beginnings, a bustling marketplace that looks like every fantasy game's starting town. As merchants hawk their goods, he reflects on his situation. This isn't just a game anymore, it's a second chance, a rare opportunity to redo everything. He vows to move smarter this time, driven by the memory of his old comrades. A flashback shows them laughing around a campfire, a painful reminder of what he lost. This climb isn't just for them, it's also for revenge against the one who destroyed it all. At the training grounds, the guy at the desk advises Subaru to use room No. 1, which just has a simple scarecrow. Clearly underwhelmed, Subaru requests room No. 5. The old man scoffs, telling him it's a waste of money and he should stick with the easy stuff. Subaru just thanks him for the concern and books 30 minutes anyway. The clerk grumbles about dramatic rookies as Subaru pays his 50 credits and walks off. We see that the difficulty ramps up with each room, but he doesn't hesitate opening the door to begin. Subaru enters the training room and grips his new weapon. The nameless magic sword immediately recognizes him, flaring with a menacing red aura. Of course, there's a catch. This thing temporarily boosts all his stats, but it also starts eating his health and mental strength. His Wedge of Greed. Skill tries to fight the backlash, but is quickly overpowered. Realizing level 1 is pushing it, Subaru grits his teeth anyway. The sword continues to drain his life force, but in return his stats skyrocket. It's a dangerous gamble, but he's all in. Gritting his teeth, Subaru wonders if he's already hit his limit. But instead of giving up, he does what any sensible person would do, he throws money at the problem. He instantly spends 10,000 credits to upgrade his Wedge of Greed skill. The system reports a partial success in resisting the sword's backlash, which is a nice way of saying it still really hurts. Despite the drain, his stats skyrocket. He finally gets the weapon under control, muttering success, before promptly face planting onto the floor. After his brief, floor-induced nap, Subaru decides it's time to test out his new toy. He grips the cursed sword and unleashes one hell of a swing, completely shattering the advanced training dummy inside room No. 5. The massive crash jolts the snoozing clerk at the front desk awake. The old man blinks, wondering if he's dreaming or just having a really weird hallucination. His confusion turns to shock as Subaru stumbles out of the room, leaving a very concerning red trail on the floor behind him. The massive crash yanks the old clerk right out of his nap. He grumbles, remembering the kid who went into room 5 not even 10 minutes ago. He shuffles over and knocks, calling out to the dreaming boy inside. Getting no answer, he cracks the door open for a peek. What he finds isn't a training room, but a crater-filled disaster zone. As the old man tries to process the absolute carnage, our boy Subaru wakes up in bed, stretching and wondering just how long he was knocked out. Subaru sips his coffee, recovering from his recent face plant. He figures he only survived the sword's backlash because it was a failed creation, but his body still feels stiff. Even so, his wedge of greed, skill let him tap into the weapon's power. Something that should have been impossible with his current flimsy stats. Feeling smug about this new synergy, he checks the cost for the next skill upgrade. His good mood vanishes instantly. The system wants 20,000 credits and he's sitting on a pathetic 50. The great Lord of Thunder strapped for cash. He has truly fallen. While Subaru mopes about his empty wallet, a spectacle unfolds outside. A ridiculously flamboyant streamer with cat ears is putting on a show, acting like the second floor is some epic dungeon. He gets a 1,000 credit donation and in a moment of pure genius, celebrates by dumping his coffee all over his own face. Subaru watches this disaster, completely baffled, but it gives him an idea. He checks his device and finds an ad for live streaming. Just as he considers this new career path, a voice from behind him makes his instincts scream danger. The voice belongs to a smug-looking guy in a fancy coat who chides Subaru for ignoring his friend. At first, Subaru is just confused, but then a chilling realization hits him. This isn't just a bad vibe, it's pure, unadulterated fear, a feeling he hasn't experienced in a long time. The encounter triggers a nasty flashback to his early days in the tower. A younger him is on the ground, asking the same guy why he's being targeted. The bully's answer is just a string of petty insults, calling him trash and mocking him for being an orphan. In the brutal flashback, a desperate younger Subaru cries out that the credits he received weren't enough. His protest is immediately silenced by a heavy blow from the bully, who demands he not talk back. The tormentor then stands over him, crushing a device and smugly assigning him a new home. He's forbidden to ever leave. The memory then shows the same bully listening to another kid, Shui, brag about his own achievements. The bully internally scoffs, thinking he doesn't have time to get revenge for every pathetic kid. Back in the present, Subaru decides that if his old bully ever gets in the way of his real revenge, he won't hesitate. And speak of the devil, a hand yanks him back. It's Shui. Looking just as arrogant as he did in the flashback, he gets right in Subaru's face, mocking him and asking if he's that eager to get put in his place again. But this isn't the same weak kid from years ago. With a dangerous glint in his eye, Subaru coldly tells him to let go for his own good. Shui, ever the charming antagonist, tightens his grip and warns Subaru not to get ahead of himself. With a dangerous glint in his glowing red eye, Subaru simply introduces his new identity. Q. He's smart enough to know that causing a scene in a crowded room would be a major loss for him. But his calculated silence is completely misinterpreted. Shui bursts out laughing, patting him down like a scared puppy. He smugly says he was just threatening him for old time's sake, observing that Subaru's small fry nature is still perfectly intact. Shui bursts into obnoxious laughter, patting Subaru down like he's a stray dog he just kicked. He claims he was just messing with him for old time's sake, guessing a guy like him probably just barely passed the tutorial. But the mood shifts on a dime. His friendly act vanishes, replaced by a dangerous sneer. He questions if Subaru seriously intends to fight him. Leaning in with glowing eyes, he warns that he could quietly make him disappear, pulling the classic, "Do you know who my father is?" card before walking off. Subaru just watches him go, his icy blue eyes saying everything. Players can level up by hunting monsters in the wild, which is way faster than the official exams. But there's a tiny catch: these hunting grounds are real. If a player bites the dust out there, it's permanent. Naturally, most people avoid taking such life-ending risks. Our boy Subaru, however, is not most people. He's already lounging next to a massive orc he just dealt with. He knows the score slow is safe, but fast is dangerous. And Subaru is a man who likes to live life in the fast lane. After his little workout, Subaru whips out his device to check out the streaming scene. To his absolute lack of surprise, he finds a top streamer pulling in 80,000 viewers, a total knockoff using a version of his old name and mask. This guy theatrically announces he's challenging the third floor exam again. A mission then flashes on screen, offering 20,000 credits if the streamer acts like an idiot. The poser happily accepts, but for Subaru, a light bulb goes off. He had no idea you could pay people to do stuff on stream. As the knockoff streamer gets showered with missions and cash from his viewers, he thanks them with a flourish, promising to clear the exam for their sake. Subaru watches this whole circus from the grimy hunting grounds, a dead monster at his feet. He glances at his own measly 50 credits, then back at the screen. This clown is making a fortune playing make-believe, while he's doing the actual life risking work. A slow, dangerous grin spreads across his face as the realization hits him. The game has changed, And it's time to start his own show. Deciding to clock in for one more job, Subaru stomps his foot, summoning an entire squad of orcs and their leader to boss Orc General. He smirks, remarking that he won't need cheap tricks this time because he brought a new toy. A menacing red blade materializes in his hand, the nameless magic sword. This thing drains his health to jack up his stats, with a handy skill to resist the backlash. With glowing eyes, he tells the monsters he's busy, which is just his polite way of saying it's go time. Declaring he has no time to waste on the opening act, Subaru launches himself forward. In a single, fluid motion, his crimson sword carves a perfect arc through the air, and the entire mob of orc minions is instantly neutralized. The orc general barely has time to let out a confused grunt before Subaru is a red blur right in its face. A flurry of strikes later, the fight is over. Meanwhile, in a high-tech monitoring room, an official watching the feed is so utterly stunned by this performance that she falls right out of her chair. In another monitoring room, a different kind of drama is unfolding. A blue-haired official gripes about the latest popular streamer, some clown named Subekichi, dismissing him as just another cheap knockoff. His partner, Hatsuka, tells him to knock it off, reminding him that these streamers are the reason they have jobs. But she immediately gets heated, ranting about how these fakers disrespect the real players who actually risk their lives. With a sly grin, her colleague asks why, if she feels so strongly, she quit climbing to work a desk job. That shut her right up. Her colleague gets savage, suggesting she quit because she was bored. She quietly corrects him, admitting she just lacked the ability, but he knows the real tea. She was a massive fangirl of the original Narugami, and once he was gone, so was her motivation. Their little squabble is interrupted when an alert pops up on his screen. He tells her it's just another Narugami cosplayer, but his shocked expression says otherwise. Meanwhile, Subaru feels the weight of his two-person audience. A chatter asks if he's new, and Subaru confirms it, earning some concerned follow-up questions. A viewer chimes in, suggesting that since he's new, he's probably lost. As if on cue, a monstrous one-eyed bat drops from the ceiling and dives right for him. Unfazed, Subaru casually plucks the creature out of the air with one hand, stopping it dead. Before the bat can even let out a confused squeak, he sends it flying with a single powerful punch. A system window pops up, confirming the easy kill. Then, with his eyes glowing, Subaru looks directly into the stream and coolly asks if there's a problem. Subaru steps into the beginner's dungeon, his stream live with a booming audience of 3 people. One helpful viewer named Love Money advises him to play it safe and wait for a party. Subaru glances at the chat and casually states that's impossible, as he finds solo challenges more interesting. The chat immediately loses its mind, calling him a doomed rookie who clearly didn't do his homework. Right on cue, a loud screech echoes through the cave as a monstrous one-eyed bat dives straight for him, ready to prove the trolls right. As if summoned by his confidence, a whole swarm of monstrous bats descends upon him. But Subaru just smirks. In a blur of motion, he draws a wicked-looking blade and unleashes a single, sweeping attack that turns the entire horde into dust. His chat, which has suddenly jumped to 10 viewers, erupts in pure confusion, asking what on earth just happened. System windows confirm he's already taken out multiple monster types. Subaru calmly states that if you just focus on the sound, you'll know. Right? Because it's that simple. Subaru casually mentions he knows exactly how many monsters are coming and from where. His chat explodes, with some calling him a pro and others, predictably, claiming they could do it too. Deciding his performance isn't good enough, Subaru dismisses the chat and focuses on farming more points. He begins walking straight down the cavern path, causing his viewers to argue over whether he's a tactical genius or just a fool. Meanwhile, he strolls directly under a ceiling absolutely covered in a massive swarm of waiting monsters. Well, this should be fun. As hundreds of glowing red eyes snap open on the ceiling above, Subaru's viewers declare his run officially over. The chat explodes with users certain he's doomed, mockingly telling him they'll see him on the retree. Just as the swarm prepares to descend, a system window appears, offering a mission: take out the entire horde for 100 credits. While his audience calls it an evil joke, Subaru calmly accepts. He thanks his stream for the easy money. Meanwhile, in another part of the tower, a player slams his fist, furious about failing. Elsewhere, the player who failed the exam is having a complete meltdown, demanding his money back before sheepishly apologizing for the outburst. Back in the cavern, Subaru's viewer count jumps to 15 as he becomes a whirlwind of crimson energy tearing through the swarm. His chat loses its mind, unable to comprehend how anyone could solo so many monsters. The scene flashes back to 2 mysterious figures observing a younger Subaru. One is in awe of his amazing skill, while the other theorizes that he's not just reacting, he's predicting every single move in advance. Back in the flashback, the silver-haired figure, Shigeru, asks a young Subaru what's on his mind. Subaru, ever the charmer, flatly replies nothing, earning a prompt jerk in response. Cut back to the present, where Subaru is giving his viewers a live masterclass. He explains you don't fight one-eyed bats by aiming for their single eye. They always lunge headfirst, meaning a bigger swarm just creates more openings. He demonstrates with a perfect, sweeping strike that takes down a whole line of them, casually asking his stream if they're getting it. Subaru's chat is a mess of confusion. His big brain explanation went completely over their heads, with one viewer complaining that a newbie was giving them a useless lecture. Our hero sighs, realizing that communication is definitely not his strong suit. As he stands among the defeated monsters, a chatter has to remind him to collect his reward. The legendary player then reveals his one critical weakness: technology. He cluelessly asks his own stream how to accept the credits, and they collectively realize this combat god is a total streaming boomer. With the bats defeated, Subaru informs his 20 viewers that he's on to the last stage. His credits get a nice little bump. Meanwhile, in a high-tech monitoring room, a woman is losing her mind over his performance. Her colleague, Seijin, tries to get her to calm down, pointing out it's only the second floor. This was the wrong thing to say. After blowing up at him, she does a complete 180, swooning over the player from Earth. She's convinced it must be fate, while Seijin just suffers through her newfound crush. The female official has completely lost it. She wonders aloud if this guy is the reincarnation of the legendary Narugami Q, just like in one of those transmigration novels. She's so overwhelmed she feels dizzy, while poor Seijin looks like he's regretting all his life choices. He immediately panics when he realizes she's seriously considering scouting this total newbie. Seijin tries to bring her back to reality, reminding her that Subaru is an unknown streamer. After a bit of bickering, she just huffs, telling him to wait and see, clearly not letting this go. As some mysterious woman keeps tabs on our boy Subaru from a distance, he's busy meeting the second floor's welcoming committee. And this guy has a flair for the dramatic. With a whole lot of flexing, he goes through a full-blown werewolf transformation, complete with sprouting fur and claws. A system window helpfully identifies this fluffy menace as Wolf Warrior Greg, the gatekeeper. His glowing eyes lock onto Subaru, having finally spotted the new Hooser who dared to enter his domain. Looks like this dog's bite is going to be worse than his bark. A system message announces the final boss. A warrior of Ulb is here to acknowledge him, and by acknowledge, it means a 10-foot-tall werewolf monster materializes out of thin air. The beast seems baffled, asking if this tiny human is seriously trying to fight him all alone. Subaru, completely unfazed, just tells the wolf to look around for himself. The giant creature leans in, takes a big sniff, and compliments him, saying he smells like a great warrior. The chat explodes with jokes, while Subaru just remembers being told he stank like a goblin corpse. With that, the test is declared over. The giant werewolf boss, surprisingly chill for a final boss, grants Subaru passage. As our hero starts to leave, a new challenger in a fancy mask suddenly appears. He calmly informs Subaru that it's a shame, but he's been hired to take him out. Before Subaru can even react, the werewolf gets ridiculously protective, baring its fangs at the intruder. Meanwhile, back in the observation room, the female official reports that about 20 interested parties have already gathered, and poor Seijin looks like he's about to faint from the stress. Meanwhile, the observation room is a total mess. A very angry department head is chewing out his subordinates, demanding to know if they're joking around. He calls out Sagan for apparently gambling during work hours. But the guy is completely distracted. While his boss rants about promoting other, more proven awakened, Seijin is freaking out over Subaru's viewer count. It just passed a world-shattering 30 people. As the lecture continues, Seijin sneaks another peek and practically chokes. The viewership has now climbed over 40. The horror, the masked intruder isn't fazed by the giant, snarling werewolf acting as Subaru's new bodyguard. He activates a dark power, telling himself to stay calm. A system window pops up explaining his new skills. It burns through his stamina to give all his stats a massive boost. Basically, he's going all in. Seeing this, the werewolf lunges with its massive claws, ready to end the fight. But the masked man meets the attack head-on, his glowing sword somehow stopping the gigantic beast in its tracks. Looks like this newbie might actually be a threat. The masked man struggles, admitting that trying to match the werewolf's brute strength is a complete waste of time. Shocker. Even the giant wolf seems a little impressed, giving a nod to the guy for being a true warrior. But it quickly kills the mood by adding that, respect or not, he's still no match for it. To prove the point, the beast unleashes another devastating swipe with its glowing claws. The masked man is sent stumbling backward, barely managing to block the overwhelming power of the attack. Looks like this bodyguard is earning its keep. The livestream chat is going wild, with viewers calling the masked man insanely strong for even surviving this long. The werewolf decides playtime is over. After dropping some cryptic advice that there are better methods than brute force, it announces the end of the fight. The beast lunges forward, claws glowing, and unleashes a devastating swipe that tears up the ground. But when the dust settles, the masked man is gone. The werewolf looks around, confused, only to realize his opponent is now standing right behind him, having left a series of nasty gashes across its back. The werewolf is absolutely stunned. Apparently, nobody told the big guy that dodging is a basic combat skill. Not wasting a single second, the masked man leaps forward, his sword crackling with dark power. He brings the weapon down in a devastating arc, leaving a massive injury across the beast's chest. The bodyguard hits the floor, completely defeated. The system immediately rewards Subaru with a double level up and 500 achievement points. His tiny audience of 56 viewers absolutely loses their minds, shocked that he actually managed to pull it off. With the werewolf bodyguard handled, Subaru gets a mission cleared screen and a nice 3,000 credit payday. He pockets the cash as a giant door rumbles open, revealing his next challenge. He steps into a vast hall, and the very ground begins to tremble. Before him stand numerous pillars, each offering a different trial. His tiny audience is floored to see 13 choices, a clear sign of his insane talent. But then a special option appears, crackling with golden lightning, the Trial of Thunder. Well, this is a little on the nose, isn't it? Without a moment's hesitation, Subaru picks the most obvious choice on the board, the Trial of Thunder. I mean, come on, it was practically made for him. He's instantly teleported away, leaving his tiny audience in shock. Elsewhere, a group of high-ranking officials are losing their minds. One woman is practically vibrating with excitement, pointing out that getting 13 trial options is completely unheard of. A grim face department head adds that the guy also just defeated a previously unbeaten foe. Seeing his chance, a younger official proposes a little bet. The young official dramatically proposes her insane bet. If Subaru fails to acquire the Thunder ability, she and her terrified colleague Seongyeon will have their salaries frozen for 5 years. The guy looks like his soul has already left his body. However, if Subaru succeeds, the department head, Seijin, has to sign the contract on the spot. Seijin scoffs at the idea, pointing out that only the original Narigami Subaru ever passed that trial. But the woman's confidence doesn't waver. Seeing an easy victory, he accepts the bet. Subaru materializes in a rocky wasteland, a place he seems to recognize instantly. Before he can get his bearings, some masked guy with a dramatic ponytail zips past, yelling at him for spacing out. He asks if Subaru has a death wish, and honestly, it's a fair question. Right on cue, a giant muscle-bound creature with a creepy smile appears, swinging a massive club down at them. But Subaru isn't scared, he's just confused, wondering why this specific monster is even here. Talk about a warm welcome to the trial. The livestream chat immediately blows up with confusion. Everyone knows this monster doesn't belong in the Thunder trial. Subaru confirms their suspicions. This is a late-game boss showing up at the starting line. As the giant swings its club down, the masked dude shoves Subaru to safety just as the ground gets pulverized. He yells at Subaru to run, clearly thinking he's some helpless newbie. But Subaru isn't scared, just bored. Deciding to end this quickly, a system alert flashes, casually mentioning that his sword is currently draining his health. Great timing. So the health-draining sword is a feature, not a bug. A handy system alert explains Subaru's stats get a massive boost for every point of HP he sacrifices. Instead of running like his new masked friend suggested, Subaru charges straight in. He effortlessly parries the monster's gigantic club, leaving the ponytail guy absolutely speechless. This newbie isn't supposed to fight back. Before anyone can process what's happening, Subaru runs straight up the giant's arm and delivers a clean, decisive strike before landing perfectly on his feet. Just another Tuesday. Done with the noise, Subaru tells the giant to stay quiet forever. He plunges his blade straight into the beast, and the massive creature collapses in a heap. System alerts immediately flood his vision, confirming he's defeated the boss and somehow cleared stage 4 already. The rewards roll in stat boosts, points, and rare items. Down below, the masked ponytail guy is having a complete meltdown, unable to believe what he just saw. His priceless reaction doesn't go unnoticed by the livestream chat, who are just as confused by the instant stage clear. The masked dude is still processing the one-sided beatdown he just witnessed, asking Subaru what on earth he is. Instead of a normal answer, Subaru hits him with the edgiest pose possible and declares he's the one who came to slay the giant. Even the system calls him out, labeling his dramatic stance a serious pose. After the theatrics, Subaru finds himself in a quiet village room, checking his rewards. He got a rare accessory, the giant's heart, and notes that vitality boosting items are pretty valuable. The livestream chat immediately corrects him, saying that item is a lifetime piece, basically priceless. Before he can process his new wealth, a fan AI with a very familiar name issues him a personal quest, learn a Thunder skill for 5,000 credits. Looks like he's already got sponsors. The sponsorships keep flooding in, with another fan matching the 5,000 credit offer for him to learn a Thunder skill. Genuinely surprised by the support, Subaru quietly thanks them and promises to deliver the show they're paying for. It's finally dawning on him that his old self, Narukami-Q, was basically a celebrity, a bigger legend than he ever realized. Before he can get too sentimental, a new character appears. A man named Peleus, the captain of the village knights, explains that the entire town is on high alert with everyone on 24-hour standby. So much for a victory lap. The knight captain, Peleus, cuts right to the chase. He explains that his recon team has located the giant chieftain's lair and they're planning a full-scale, probably suicidal attack. But before Subaru can weigh in, Peleus and another village official suddenly drop to their knees. In a dramatic display of desperation, they beg the masked stranger to save their town. The livestream chat immediately loses its collective mind, with some fans dropping massive spoilers and pleading for Peleus to survive. Subaru goes still, recalling a grim memory. He knows exactly what happens next. Peleus dies. Subaru, clearly not a fan of the whole groveling display, tells Peleus to stand up. Deciding to intervene where he didn't before, he calmly agrees to help. With that settled, the system announces the beginning of Stage 50 Survival, and the entire nightly entourage marches toward their doom. While walking, Subaru realizes his livestream chat is blowing up so fast he can't read it. He calls for a halt just as one of the villagers spots their target. Lounging in the distance is the giant chieftain, just waiting for them. The knights spot their target, the giant chieftain just lounging around like he's on vacation. Thinking this is their chance, Peleus gets ready to lead the charge. But before he can take a single glorious step, Subaru grabs his shoulder, telling him to wait. The knight looks confused, but Subaru's attention is fixed on the supposed boss. Suddenly, an immense pressure slams down, making the ground tremble. As the knights struggle to stay upright a second, much creepier giant rises from behind the first, wearing a truly unsettling smile. Their recon team might have missed a tiny detail. The knights' glorious charge lasts all of 2 seconds before the giants turn them into a human bowling alley. One moment they're yelling battle cries, the next they're just yelling. A knight gets snatched up like a forgotten appetizer while others are swatted away. Seeing his entire force getting dismantled, Peleus makes the only smart call of the day: run. He screams for everyone to retreat, and his terrified men are more than happy to oblige, scrambling for their lives as the giants advance with unsettling grins. Just as the world's most one-sided monster fight is about to begin, the scene abruptly cuts to a quiet cabin in the woods. Far from the impending chaos, a mysterious woman with messy black hair is casually watching the whole thing on her phone. With a slight smirk, she notes that this is a special event, something to be enjoyed in the moment. She's clearly getting a kick out of Subaru's return. Looking up from her screen, she wonders if it's almost time for the main event to start. The woman's viewing party is crashed by a guy with majestic silver hair who announces it's time to things. Real subtle. He peeks over her shoulder, asking what's so interesting. She shows him her phone, displaying a picture of Subaru's streamer persona, Narugami Q. The silver-haired man freaks out, yelling the name like he's seen a ghost. She calmly clarifies that it's just some rookie impersonator doing a trial. He then drops a cryptic line about someone named Kyoryanja being erased, leaving his companion completely bewildered. The silver-haired man stares at the phone and declares that Q is dead. This seems to be a sensitive topic, as Shigeru looks completely flustered. He calls her out, asking how long she plans to hide in some kid's shadow. Trying to play it cool, she grabs his arm, claiming she was just killing time and turning the question back on him. Clearly not buying it, he snatches the phone from her hand. As he glares at the screen, his calm demeanor shatters and his eyes begin to glow with an intense blue energy. Back in the trial, a brilliant light explodes from Subaru. He unleashes a massive wave of golden energy, completely erasing every monster in the area. And just like that, the battlefield is clear. A system window pops up, announcing he's acquired the legendary Thunder skill and 2,000 achievement points. His livestream chat completely loses it, with viewers spamming about how insane the difficulty is. Someone asks how he did it, and Subaru just scoffs. He knows that even if he spelled it out for them, they couldn't possibly replicate his power. Subaru reflects that he shouldn't have been able to get an A+ skill like Thunder here, but hey, not being dead is a win. The trial pauses and his stream explodes with donations from fans, with some. After raking in over 20,000 credits, he barely has time to thank his new benefactors before the trial resumes. A new batch of ugly monsters appears, but Subaru is unfazed. Brandishing a sinister red blade, he announces he'll show them that thing and promptly spends all 20,000 credits to do it. A system window explains his expensive new purchase. Wedge of Self, Desire, a skill that lets him use Thunder's raw power without the nasty recoil. A brief flashback shows his past self having to hold back, but those days are over. Now, he infuses the legendary golden energy into his nameless blade, which erupts with a sinister red aura. Thinking back to the good old days, he decides it's time for a rampage. In a flash of crimson light, he tears through the monster horde, leaving nothing but destruction in his wake. Subaru's crimson blade carves a path of absolute ruin, and just like that, the battlefield is silent. But instead of a victory cheer, he's muttering curses. Turns out our legendary hero got a little less too into his power fantasy. He was supposed to be saving energy for the trip back, but he completely misjudged the output and blew it all on that one spectacular light show. Now, panting and out of gas, he looks up to find some armored official staring him down. Well, this is awkward. The armored officials suddenly look shocked. One blonde knight stares in disbelief, calling Subaru his benefactor, before he and his entire squad dramatically collapse. As the NPCs vanish, a disembodied voice echoes, calling our hero an idiot for his reckless display. Meanwhile, back in the control room, the people monitoring the exam are absolutely losing it. One official is practically having a panic attack at his desk, clutching his uniform in sheer stress. His two stone-faced colleagues just stand there in silence, probably rethinking their entire careers. Back at the office, a woman is having a complete meltdown on a couch, clutching her head in despair. One of the higher-ups asks his colleague if all this drama is really necessary. The other guy just shrugs, admitting he has no clue how a woman's mind works. Turns out she's panicking that her business proposal to Subaru sounded too stiff and wishes she'd added more emojis. Her boss calls her a crazed fan, but she snaps right back, declaring that she's a passionate fan first and a manager second. She seems proud of it, too. The manager suddenly snaps to attention, her professional crisis momentarily forgotten. She realizes what she just saw wasn't just any skill. It was the thunder, a legendary power that only the original Narugami Q had ever mastered. Her boss smirks, coolly noting that it makes sense why no one else could ever acquire it. But this revelation is quickly overshadowed by a much more personal tragedy. She remembers her business proposal and shrieks that Subaru left her on read. The sheer, unfiltered humiliation causes her to freeze solid, becoming a white statue of pure cringe, leaving her colleagues to wonder if she died standing up. Neon-lit room that looks like a pro, gamer's dream. A new player enters the scene. From his high-tech gaming chair, he coolly asks if it's time to begin his show. This is Hawkeye, a popular streamer who makes his living analyzing other players' fights. He's covered everyone from some new hotshot in the Blue Zone Guild to, more importantly, Kyojisuke himself. Apparently, even the guy who betrayed our hero gets the full celebrity commentary treatment these days. Hawkeye kicks off his broadcast with some mandatory praise for the current top player, Kyojisuke, the supposed strongest man, but that's just the warm-up act. He quickly pivots, declaring that when it comes to true legends, only one name matters: Narugami-Q. After all, everyone knows who the real Lord of Thunder is. His stream goes live, promising an in-depth analysis of the new Narugami. The chat immediately explodes with confusion and complaints, but Hawkeye coolly tells his audience to settle down. The show is just getting started. With a confident click of his mouse, Hawkeye starts the playback. His smug analyst grin quickly vanishes, replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. On the screen, his viewers see exactly what's shocking him: Subaru, surrounded by countless enemies, unleashing a devastating dark power that rips through their ranks. Hawkeye stammers, absolutely floored by the display. He tells his audience that this kind of perfect control over a newly acquired skill is impossible. Normal players would be fumbling, but Subaru is applying the power with surgical precision, infusing just enough into his sword to get the job done. The expert analyst is having a professional meltdown. He declares that Subaru fought flawlessly, not making a single mistake. He calls him a monster, admitting most viewers can't even comprehend the skill level. Then comes the ultimate praise. Hawkeye wonders if this rookie is somehow better than the legendary Narukami was in his prime. Just as the hype peaks, Subaru is abruptly pulled from the fight. A system window flashes before him, asking a strange question: does he want to interrupt the trial? The system clarifies the strange offer: he can only interrupt the trial if he's perfectly rested between stages. Realizing his stream is still live, Subaru quickly thanks everyone for watching and abruptly shuts it down, leaving his new fans begging for an encore. He's immediately transported to a sterile white, stage waiting room. While waiting, he glances at a new notification on his device. Is it a secret quest, a legendary reward? Nope. He just stares at the screen deadpan and wonders if he's getting spam mail. Even legends can't escape junk mail. Turns out that junk mail wasn't so spammy after all. The message is from Souden Entertainment, and Subaru realizes it's a massive company. He quickly connects the dots. That loudmouth analyst, Hawkeye, is one of their streamers. He recalls the guy's whole shtick is blunt talk, which explains why his comment section is a total mess. Still, Subaru has to admit the guy has a good eye for talent. He keeps reading, then sees the exact quote that blew everyone's minds: the claim he might be even better than Narugami was in his prime. While Subaru weighs the offer, another player in the waiting room is having a full-blown meltdown. Staring at his device, he scoffs that Subaru is just some thin player who got lucky. The guy's jealousy intensifies as he questions how some nobody is getting so much attention. Trying to ignore the background noise, Subaru is suddenly jolted as another player carelessly bumps into him. A cup of coffee goes flying, splashing all over his front. Shocked and now covered in a hot mess, Subaru looks up at the offender, demanding an explanation. The guy who spilled the coffee isn't exactly apologetic. Instead, a smug grin spreads across his face as he recognizes Subaru. Rather than helping, he just stands there enjoying the moment. Subaru, now drenched and annoyed, says nothing, just glaring back. A strange blue light flashes between the two, hinting at a coming confrontation. Suddenly, a third player storms onto the scene looking furious. He gets right in the silver-haired guy's face, asking him if he has a screw loose and reminding him that he was warned last time. Looks like this walking disaster has a reputation. The silver-haired player, Peleus, grabs Subaru's shirt, promising to destroy him just like he supposedly did before. But Subaru, looking completely unbothered, simply grabs the guy's wrist. With a slight squeeze, a nasty cracking sound fills the air and Peleus' smug expression melts into pure shock. He can't believe how strong Subaru is. Subaru coolly tells him that this little payment more than makes up for the coffee. He then shoves the bully to the ground and walks away, leaving the veteran player Dale completely stunned. After that masterclass in public humiliation, Peleus scrambles away, clutching his seriously damaged hand. He's fuming, convinced Subaru is just trying to provoke him, which is pretty rich coming from the guy who started it. While the bully runs off to cry about it, Subaru calmly strolls through town and checks his device. He has a new message from someone named Narugami Ho. Their profile picture is a very professional shot of a woman in a bubble bath. The message itself is simple, asking if they can meet up sometime. After tidying up the dungeon's welcoming committee, Subaru calmly steps into the banished lizardman's hideout. A notification confirms his arrival at the boss room. His nameless magic sword crackles with golden energy, its dangerous recoil easily handled by his skills. Right on schedule, a massive, fire-breathing boss called Salamander erupts from the shadows, letting out a furious roar. But instead of being intimidated, Subaru just sees a perfect opportunity to test out his new toy's maximum power. Looks like this lizard is about to have a very bad day. The salamander lunges, but Subaru is already one step ahead. Infusing his feet with thunder, he zips out of the monster's path like it's standing still. This overgrown gecko doesn't stand a chance. He then channels that same electric power into his sword. A notification pops up. His own skill fails to resist the intense recoil and his fatigue level shoots up. But who cares about a little exhaustion? Subaru pushes through the strain, unleashing a massive, electrified swing that slams right into the fiery beast. That's definitely gonna leave a mark. That electrified swing wasn't just for show. The golden energy tears through the salamander, completely overwhelming the boss in a single, glorious strike. And what's the reward for one-shotting a dungeon boss? A cascade of happy blue windows, of course. Subaru gets a level up and a neat little boost to his strength, stamina, and magic power. Later, while walking through a forest, he reflects on the fight, realizing the sword's recoil barely fazed him. The fatigue reduction worked better than expected, leaving him with plenty of gas in the tank. Subaru reflects that he can definitely push himself harder. There's just one tiny problem: his handy wedge of self-desire skill costs a fortune to upgrade. Grumbling about the universe's terrible price scaling, he wishes a good job would just fall into his lap. Speak of the devil. A large menacing figure suddenly appears in the woods, grinning from ear to ear. The stranger mentions their long relationship, but Subaru is completely unfazed. He just calls the guy persistent. Looks like this new job opportunity is going to be more trouble than it's worth. Subaru coolly announces that he's considered the stranger's offer. With a smug grin, the man gets all dramatic, suggesting they should part ways for good after this little meeting. Subaru just stares back, completely unimpressed by the performance. The scene then shifts to a bustling city street at night. A new character with blonde hair sits at a table, impatiently asking why he was summoned. The person he's meeting compliments his sharp perception, saying he certainly lives up to the name, Hawkeye. The man explains his business. He wants to talk about Narugami Q, the streamer Hawkeye just reviewed. Apparently, he's thinking of scouting our boy for his agency. The man's brilliant plan is to set up a collaboration stream between Hawkeye and Subaru to boost the rookie's recognition. Back in the dark forest, the persistent stranger gets a villainous glint in his eye, pointing out that it's just the two of them. He then starts mocking Subaru, sarcastically asking if he got scared and ran from the dungeon since he doesn't have a single scratch. The persistent stranger gets way too close for comfort, mocking Subaru for thinking a little luck makes him the real Narugami Q. His grip tightens as he launches into a full-blown tantrum, his eyes glowing red with rage. Apparently, the dead should stay dead, and he's sick of all the impersonators. Subaru just sweats a little thinking about the absolute irony of a world filled with his own copycats. Cutting through the rage fest, he asks the psycho why he's so fixated on him. The answer is simple: it's because his name is Q. Subaru casually asks why the stranger hates his name so much, pointing out that everyone else seems to like it. Losing his cool, the man tries to pull the classic, "Do you know who my father is?" card. Unimpressed, Subaru roasts him for being a grown man who still has to bring up his dad in every situation. The scene then cuts to an urgent report: a major incident has occurred. Narigami Q, from Earth's Blue Eyes Guild, just took down a famous ranker named Reinhardt with a single devastating blow, leaving him unconscious. The famous ranker, Reinhardt, is left in a crater, weakly insisting he can still fight. Spoiler alert, he can't. The entire beatdown took less than 30 seconds flat. This sends Shuhai into an absolute frenzy, screaming at Subaru for daring to use his father's name so casually. Looking bored, Subaru correctly guesses the tantrum is about Shuhai's dad, the one strike swordsman. Shuhai rants about his father's suffering, then tells Subaru to shut his mouth as his fists erupt in flames, ready for round 2. As Shuhei powers up, ready to turn the area into a barbecue pit, Subaru has a simple one-word response: no. He casually walks forward, completely unimpressed by the flames licking at his boots. It's like watching someone get mad at a brick wall. Done with the dramatic speeches, Shuhai channels all his rage into a single massive attack, telling Subaru to stop rambling and get ready to be erased. With a final roar, he unleashes a huge wave of fire, determined to end this once and for all. As his fairy tantrum hits its peak, Shuhai launches into a full-blown monologue. He rants that he always hated the original Narigami Q, calling him an overrated leader whose arrogance led the Blue Eyes Guild to ruin. He sneers that they got exactly what they deserved. This little speech finally gets a reaction from Subaru, whose eyes begin to glow with a cold, dangerous light. Blinded by rage, Shuhai declares that inheriting that name was the kid's biggest mistake and unleashes a massive, roaring inferno to wipe him out for good. As Shuhai's inferno engulfs the area, another player watches from afar. He offers a fake apology, claiming he slipped up with his power control on an old buddy he just took down. Feeling just awful about it, he decides he'll deal with the masked streamer next. But inside the blaze, Subaru overhears the comment. Completely untouched by the firestorm, he asks if they mean this mask. In a flash of light, a glowing ethereal mask forms over his face, extinguishing the flames instantly and leaving Shuhai speechless. His ultimate attack did absolutely nothing. Shuhai is having a complete meltdown, demanding to know how someone could just walk through his ultimate fire attack. But Subaru has officially heard enough, stating that he doesn't like listening to a brat like him. He stomps the ground and vanishes in a burst of speed. Before Shuhai can even process what's happening, Subaru is right in his face. A single, devastating strike connects, sending the loudmouth crashing to the ground, completely out of the fight. So much for all that tough talk. Looming over the downed loudmouth, Subaru explains that the beatdown was payback for badmouthing his old crew. Barely able to speak, Shuhai can't process the insane power gap. But the lesson isn't over. Subaru grabs his face and announces a pop quiz he does Shuhai really think he is. The weakling he used to bully. The masked streamer. Or maybe, as he slowly removes his mask, he's the legendary Narigami Q of Blue Eyes. Even faced with the big reveal, Shuhai coughs up some defiance, calling it a bluff. Still spitting defiance, Shuhai laughs off the reveal. He claims that if a loser like Subaru could learn lightning, it just proves that she is superior to the legendary Narigami Q. With a final, desperate scream, he ignites his hand and lunges forward for a killer blow. But his all-out attack is stopped cold. Subaru effortlessly catches the flaming hand, completely neutralizing it. Shui stumbles back in disbelief, staring at his now useless limb. Subaru just looks down on him and calmly states that was the wrong answer. Subaru is almost impressed, telling the guy it takes real talent to be that consistently wrong. The wannabe starts sweating, stammering, and asking what he means. Turns out, our guy really hates hearing a punk trash talk the legendary Narigami. As the horrifying truth finally dawns on Shuhai, it's already too late. Subaru draws his blade in a flash, sending the loudmouth flying with a single, decisive strike. Standing over the defeated fool, he calls it fan service and sarcastically thanks him for everything before walking away. Later, Subaru sits down for a meeting, his streamer getup immediately drawing side eye from the locals. They mutter about him being a shameless Narigami fanboy, but he pays them no mind. Suddenly, a flustered woman bursts in, apologizing for being late. She nervously introduces herself as Hatsuko, the person who contacted him. As she tries to compose herself, Subaru has a very meta thought. If the as-real Narigami Q ever came back, he'd probably hide his face behind a mask, too. Snapped out of his thoughts, he realizes she's asking if something is wrong. Hatsuko snaps to attention, her professional composure completely shattered. Realizing she's making a fool of herself, Subaru cuts to the chase and asks if she was a fan of the legendary Narigami Q. This was the exact wrong thing to say. The woman immediately freaks out, confirming she's a massive, die-hard fan. He tries to calm her down, insisting he's just a copycat, but she's not listening. She starts gushing about his first stream, recalling details even he barely remembers. Subaru is stunned. This girl might actually be his very first viewer. He admits he was clumsy back then, but she calls it fate, proudly declaring that she begged her company to let her manage him personally. Hatsuko flips a switch from flustered fan to stone, cold professional, deciding it's time to win his trust. She slaps a pre-prepared contract on the table, summarizing the deal her company will handle commercials, events, and clips to build his brand. Subaru, ever the skeptic, asks what the catch is. Her answer is suspiciously simple, just keep streaming. He's taken aback, wondering if all streamers get this kind of VIP treatment. Hatsuko explains he's a special case, being the first to master lightning. Instead of accepting, he asks if all her managers are as enthusiastic as she is. Hatsuko immediately starts backpedaling, insisting her colleagues are way more professional than she is. But Subaru isn't listening, he's focused on the powerful aura rolling off her. This woman is no ordinary player. He's shocked that someone this strong is just a manager. The power levels have clearly skyrocketed in 20 years. This realization lights a fire under him. There's no time to rest. Cutting through her rambling, he extends a hand and says he looks forward to working with her. A flustered Hatsuko manages to shake his hand, sealing the deal. Subaru hits the "Go Live" button, and the stream immediately pops off with over 700 viewers. Of course, the chat is a beautiful mix of excited fans and skeptics calling him a copycat. He silently thanks his new super fan manager Hatsuko for her promotion skills. Wasting no time, Subaru announces he's ready to start the dungeon crawl. However, his new party members, a squad of heavily armored knights, are already whispering amongst themselves. They're skeptical about trusting some random streamer who isn't even a proper knight. Talk about a warm welcome. The knights immediately start gossiping, finding it hard to believe some rando just appeared and single-handedly defeated the giant's boss. One of them tells his pal, Peleus, that he might have been deceived, questioning if it was even the real boss. Before Peleus can get properly offended, Subaru is on his feet. The blonde knight rushes over to check on their benefactor, who thanks him for the help. The other knights, however, continue their expert analysis, deciding he looks weak and his mask is super suspicious. Subaru just stares back, calmly stating it seems they don't believe him. Subaru mentally shrugs, maybe they just don't want to believe him. Luckily, his new manager taught him how to adjust his mic so only the viewers can hear his private thoughts. He immediately uses this to call the situation boring, which a nearby knight misinterprets as pure arrogance. While the stream chat eats up the drama, a veteran knight named Dale steps forward. He properly thanks Subaru and shakes his hand, but his expression is grim. Dale explains he was protecting the village when everyone was trampled by that one, a creature even more dangerous than the boss. Dale launches into a quick history lesson, explaining that the giants they know are just weak echoes. The true giants, the ones who literally fought gods, were sealed away long ago. And it seems one of them is back. As the stream chat collectively loses its mind, Subaru just shrugs. If it's here, they have no choice but to defeat it. Another knight scoffs at his confidence, but Dale grimly admits they're asking him to do the impossible. Before the heckling can continue, Peleus loudly stands up for his benefactor. Peleus, bless his heart, gets all fired up, recalling a family legend passed down through the generations. Apparently, some ancestor of his believed that a fragment of thunder was hidden atop a mountain and only a true hero could find it. Now, Peleus looks at our masked streamer and decides he's the guy for the job. But Dale, the veteran, isn't caught up in fairy tales. He's trapped in a waking nightmare, reliving the moment the true giant appeared. The memory of losing his son, idle in the chaos, sends a wave of pure anguish and rage radiating from the old knight. The flashback slams into Dale's mind. He's back in that burning village, screaming as the true giant snatches his son, Idle. The colossal creature makes a chilling promise to send the boy to the afterlife with a gruesome farewell. With a single, decisive squeeze of its massive fist, the young knight is gone in a brutal display of power. The memory fades, and that same monstrous figure is now reflected in Subaru's eyes. He confirms grimly that this is the one, as the stream chat finally connects the horrifying dots. With the grim reality setting in, Subaru rides hard, stating the obvious: this trial is out for blood. Peleus gives him a 3-day deadline before the giants arrive, pleading with him to flee if he can't find the legendary thunder in time. Undeterred, Subaru begins his climb up the treacherous Millennium Mountain, which is supposedly the key. Asked if he'll retray the trial if he fails, he gives a simple, confident no. The stream chat explodes, with viewers creating missions and betting on his success, which is exactly the reaction he was hoping for. Subaru rides hard through the pouring rain, finally reaching the base of the imposing Millennium Mountain. The place looks less like a fun hike and more like a punishment. Dismounting, he approaches the sheer rock face, a faint energy glowing around him as he places a hand on the cold stone. Peleus's helpful parting words echo in his mind: the legendary fragment of thunder. Could be anything, a special power, an item, or even a person. The catch: nobody actually knows. He then hopefully asks if Subaru has any idea how to get it. Real useful, dude. As Subaru touches the mountain, Peleus's parting words prove utterly useless. They know the location and the legend, and that's it. So helpful. Elsewhere, a very excited businesswoman finalizes a contract over the phone, much to her boss's surprise. She tells him to check out a stream, revealing she's a massive fangirl who just signed Subaru himself. An otaku's dream come true. Back on the stormy peak, Subaru's quest takes a shocking turn. A massive bolt of lightning cracks the sky and slams directly into him, enveloping him in raw power. Instead of being turned into a crispy, fried streamer, Subaru stands in the pouring rain, literally crackling with raw electricity. His viewers, of course, are losing their minds, spamming the chat with theories about whether he's furious or has just given up. But our guy has other plans. Staring down the sheer rock face, he wonders aloud which of them is tougher. Deciding there's only one way to find out, he declares they'll fight it out to the end and slams his supercharged fist directly into the mountain, causing a massive, earth-shattering explosion. His viewers are absolutely baffled, spamming the chat with questions and calling his strategy a muscle brain play. But Subaru knows something they don't. He understands their confusion, admitting they can't possibly feel the immense power he's sensing. Deep within the mountain, a gigantic source of thunder is practically screaming at him, pulling his own energy toward it like a magnet. As his lightning-charged hand touches the stone, he realizes this is the most obvious hint he could have possibly received. The treasure is literally calling his name. A system notification helpfully announces that thunder has been generated. Yeah, we noticed. Subaru figures the real test has to be inside this giant, crackling rock. The energy is practically begging him to come closer, and who is he to deny such a passionate invitation? He lets the power surge, and the mountain cracks wide open. A glowing blue entrance appears, revealing a hidden path. Without a hint of hesitation, Subaru strolls right in like he owns the place. He's got a treasure to claim. As Subaru enters his newly smashed cave, a system message welcomes him to the path where thunder walks. To make things extra cozy, another pop-up informs him he's locked in until he clears the stage. No turning back now. Meanwhile, Dale and Peleus are having a chat. Dale wonders if Subaru can actually obtain the thunder, but Peleus is full of confidence, insisting the kid has already proven his strength. Their little fan club meeting is abruptly crashed by Shuai Suya, who yells that they have no idea what they're truly witnessing. Back with the peanut gallery, Peleus tries to play the hero and rally his troops. He admits the power they're sensing is absolutely insane, but he tells his terrified buddies they can't just quit. He says they need to trust the young hero who's handling business. Shuai, however, is practically having a panic attack, thinking it's real easy to talk tough from the sidelines. Just as he's about to have a meltdown, the ground starts to shake violently. A panicked guard bursts in, screaming that something terrible is on its way. That terrible something the guard screamed about. Yeah, it's here. The ground heaves violently, sending the entire peanut gallery, including Dale and Peleus, flying. While they're getting tossed around like laundry in a washing machine, Subaru is having a lovely stroll. He walks through a cavern made of pure, crystallized energy, wondering what the heck the objective is. A system window pops up with some nonsense, including the phrase Chihuahua of Ruin. After that useless tip, Subaru figures it out. This isn't a trial where he needs to use his eyes. Subaru quickly understands that sight is useless here. The thunder is scattered throughout the air, invisible to the naked eye, and just to make things spicier, the deeper he walks, the harder the invisible energy zaps him. The system throws a bunch of cryptic messages his way, which is about as helpful as a screen door on a submarine. After getting hit again, he calls the trial tacky. He finally gets it. This is a test of pure endurance. He starts running, fully aware that if he can't take the punishment, he's finished, while Subaru is getting zapped like a bug in a fly trap. His livestream chat is blowing up. Viewers are throwing money and missions at him, with some worrying he's going to lose his new thunder powers. But our boy just keeps sprinting through the electric gauntlet, casually thanking them for the mission reward like he just went for a light jog. Meanwhile, somewhere much cozier, the veteran Dale watches this whole fiasco unfold on his phone. He just sits by his fireplace, completely speechless, unable to process the absolute insanity he's witnessing. Just as Dale is glued to his phone, a figure pops up right behind him, making the old veteran nearly jump out of his skin. It's Rina-san, and she's got a mischievous grin. She playfully asks why he's hiding his phone, accusing him of watching some spicy content. Dale, flustered, insists his eyes were just tired. She fires back with a ridiculous theory about perverts and hair growth. Finally, he cracks, admitting he's just bored. He sarcastically claims he'll endure the hardship, which earns him a furious shout from Rina-san. Rina-san absolutely loses it, screaming that he's going to burst her eardrums. She sarcastically tells him to relax and pay her no mind, which is a pretty mixed message when you're yelling. Dale, panicking, scrambles to mute his phone. Giving him a suspicious look, Rina-san calls him a strange guy for actually listening to her for once. Deciding she's had enough, she gets up to leave. Dale tries to play it cool, asking her to stay, but she silently heads upstairs. Once he's alone, Dale sighs in relief, admitting that was a close call. With Rina-san gone, Dale gets back to his top secret mission night watching the livestream. He mutters that this streamer's personality is eerily similar to someone named Heina. Just as he's trying to figure out what's going on, the scene cuts away abruptly. We see a smug, silver-haired guy cornering a woman, grabbing her shoulder. He reveals he knew she was up to something, boasting that it's impossible to fool the master of 100 deceptions. Judging by the look of pure terror on her face, he's not kidding. A new challenge appears, instructing the player to clear the Thunder Road. In the middle of a frozen wasteland, Subaru looks up, a single tear tracing a path down his face. This test is clearly personal. He stomps his foot, and the icy ground cracks as golden lightning erupts around him. A progress bar pops up, showing he's barely made a dent. Still, he feels a familiar sensation coursing through him. He smirks under his mask, thinking that when it comes to lightning, he's handled it more times than he can count. The progress bar creeps up to a measly 3.2%. Subaru sarcastically notes how generous the system is for at least showing him the goal. Golden lightning crackles around him, but the bar barely budges. Meanwhile, his live stream chat is having a collective meltdown, asking why he isn't just running for his life. Deciding he won't be able to read the chat from here on out, Subaru tunes out the noise. Elsewhere, in a dark room illuminated by monitors, another awakened player watches the stream with unnerving intensity. He stays completely silent, his eyes locked on Subaru's masked figure. In a dimly lit office, a high-ranking suit with some very distinct face markings is having a meeting. He explains that a streamer's success is only half the battle. The quality of the other players is what truly makes or breaks the content. Taking a sip from his mug, he notes that Subaru's broadcast is less of a fan meet and greet and more like a pro's personal log. Then he drops the big idea. He wants the guy across from him to do a collaboration with Narigami Subaru. The other player, quiet until now, realizes this could be a massive opportunity. The suit lays out his brilliant, not at all parasitic plan: ride the comet's coattails and become a rising star together. The flashy streamer across from him looks down, his eyes glowing. He reflects on why he's even here. He ran away from climbing the tower because he wasn't confident enough. But the dream of becoming a star, that desire burned brighter than anything. He pictures himself floating in a cosmic void, reaching for his goal and wondering if he can finally grasp it. It's a classic case of, if you can't beat join M. The livestream feed shakes violently as Subaru struggles on the ground, his body convulsing under the immense pressure. Golden lightning doesn't just surround him, it tears through him, causing him to grunt in agony. Turns out, channeling this much power has some serious drawbacks. He grits his teeth, realizing the harsh truth of his own ability. The more powerful the lightning, the more it ravages his body from the inside out. It's a brilliant plan, assuming he doesn't completely short-circuit himself before the exam ends. Deciding he's charged up enough, Subaru stops playing around and starts forcing the raw lightning directly into his body's main energy circuits. It's a self-inflicted shock therapy session. Spreading from his core all the way down to the tiniest pathways, his system dings with a tiny +1 magic power notification for his trouble. Despite the agony, he's dead set on taming this wild power. He's essentially rewiring his entire body with pure lightning, because who needs a safe and stable power grid when you can be the power grid? Subaru reveals he's taking a shortcut he skipped in his past life, a deep cleaning of his internal energy pathways. The system, ever so helpful, slaps him with an electric shock. Status effect. He admits that while this lightning-powered method is faster, it comes with the minor side effect of excruciating pain. The raw power violently purges dark, nasty impurities from his system. This high-voltage detox is clearly working, but it's taking a serious toll, leaving him surrounded by the evidence of his brutal self-improvement plan elsewhere. A mysterious woman watches Subaru's stream, looking far too concerned for a casual viewer. She instantly recognizes the insane technique he's pulling, forcefully opening his finest energy vessels. She's shocked he'd attempt this while moving, using external power instead of his own. The woman knows the pain must be unimaginable. Most people would pass out immediately from the sheer agony. Even though the exam is a simulation, the pain is very real. The proof is in the bit of red that escapes his lips, showing the extreme toll this power-up is taking. The mystery woman is practically having a panic attack, wondering why anyone would willingly go to such extremes. The scene flashes back to a much cockier Subaru reassuring his old comrades. He confidently told them not to worry because he's the one who always wins in the end. His entire guild bought it hook, line, and sinker. But back in the present, that promise haunts him. As golden lightning tears through his body, he can only think about his thoughtless words. Crushed by the weight of a promise he's now desperately trying to fulfill, the crushing weight of regret hits him like a ton of bricks. Subaru finally admits that if he hadn't been so overconfident, maybe things would have turned out differently for everyone. He decides it's all his fault. As crimson evidence of the extreme strain streams from his eyes, the agonizing power up finally proves to be too much. He stumbles through the icy landscape before collapsing face first into the snow. Even though he's down for the count, the golden lightning crackling around him shows his painful upgrade is far from over. Subaru's brain, currently being fried by his painful power up, decides now is a great time for a trip down memory lane. He sees his old crew, the Blue Eyes Guild, just chilling around a campfire. The good old days before the backstabbing became the main event. He wonders if his current agony is just a bad dream. Suddenly, a familiar face from his past appears, basically telling him, "See, "I knew you had it in you." That's all the encouragement he needs. The pain is replaced by a confident smirk. The Lord of Thunder is back. Well, that confidence didn't last long. Subaru tries to play it cool, joking that he just had a terrible nightmare, but his brain decides to serve him a fresh platter of trauma. The happy campfire vision is replaced by a highlight reel of his greatest failures. His fallen comrades appear one by one, their expressions a mix of agony and blame. They accuse him of leading them straight to their doom with his empty promises. The so-called nightmare was just a replay of his actual, very grim past. His brain's horror movie kicks into high gear as shadowy figures of his comrades are pulled into a crimson nightmare. The almighty Lord of Thunder is reduced to desperately screaming for them not to go, begging them to wait, but it's no use. As the last vision vanishes, he finds himself back in the freezing snow, still crackling with power. He recognizes the ordeal as a dangerous hallucination, a known side effect of his level up. Apparently, he nearly went into Q deviation. Good to have a fancy term for almost losing your marbles completely, just as Subaru mentally pats himself on the back for surviving his brain's horror movie. A system window pops up, his power up is 97% complete, but the hallucinations aren't over yet. Golden energy swirls around him, and of course, his brain decides to feature special guest star the traitor, Kyojo Itsuki, looking incredibly smug. The vision then violently shifts to a packed town square. Before anyone can enjoy the scenery, a hulking, masked goon plummets from the sky, crashing into the ground and sending the terrified crowd flying. The masked goon was apparently just the appetizer. The main course arrives, a hulking beast with a smile that would make a dentist quit his job. The local knights immediately start freaking out, wondering where their mysterious hero went. One knight isn't having it, tearing into his comrades for pinning their hopes on a stranger only to doubt him later. He roasts them, asking if they can even call themselves knights. The verbal smackdown hits home. Another knight admits he's right and, with newfound resolve, draws his glowing sword to face the monster. Inspired by the epic speech, the knights decide to stop being useless. Declaring that their job is to protect, they agree to go down swinging like true warriors and charge forward. Back in reality, Subaru's power up hits a tantalizing 99%. But his body is waving a white flag, as system warnings scream that his fatigue is critical. Ignoring the alerts, his golden avatar in the vision zips past everyone. A blinding red flash cuts through the chaos, suggesting a swift and decisive end to the monster's rampage. It turns out that whole "let's die together" pep talk was completely unnecessary. Subaru's golden avatar moves like a blur of righteous fury, landing devastating hits on the monster before it can even blink. The beast howls in agony as deep gashes appear all over its body, clearly outmatched. After a final, decisive slice, the knight lands gracefully, his sword crackling with power. He looks back at the stunned local talent and shouts for them to leave the rest to him. The main character has officially entered the chat. Subaru's golden avatar gets straight to business. With a blinding series of blue slashes, he gives the monster a very bad day, carving it up before it can even process what's happening. The beast lets out a final, pained roar and collapses, thoroughly defeated. Just as the threat is gone, the local knights find their courage again. They rush forward with one guy shouting that, "We did it." The others join in, furiously attacking the downed creature and yelling at the disgusting monster. "Sure guys, you did all the work." With the monster gone, the local knights start patting each other on the back, thanking their leader, Dale. One smug dude, Shuhai, even scoffs that the beast wasn't a big deal. Dale tries to warn them that the real threat is still out there, but his words are cut short by a colossal shadow. A new, much bigger giant looms over them, making the last one look like a pet. While the knights panic, realizing this thing is on a whole different level, Subaru's golden avatar just powers up, promising to send it straight to the afterlife. The scene flashes back to a younger Subaru, absolutely radiating power. He makes a grim promise to his trusted friend Kyojo, vowing to bring back a rather gnarly souvenir from his next fight. After unleashing a devastating amount of golden energy, a system window confirms his technique is complete. But this memory of strength fades into one of weakness. The scene cuts to him on the ground, taken out by a surprise attack. His final thought is a sarcastic plea for a heads-up next time. And with that, the strongest player is no more. Meanwhile, in a fancy office somewhere, a sharply dressed man named John watches Subaru's stream, looking about as thrilled as someone doing their taxes. He thinks to himself that there's a fine line between bravery and just being reckless. His phone buzzes, and on the other end is a friend who's absolutely losing his mind over the broadcast. The caller gushes that Subaru is incredible as both a player and a streamer. John, ever the cool cucumber, tells him to take a breath and explain properly. His friend clarifies that this is the whole appeal. The real Narugami Q was a legendary player, not just another internet personality. The man on the phone hammers his point home, telling John that they're witnessing the birth of the player Narugami Q in real time. Back on the live feed, the performance takes its toll. The Golden God mode fades and Subaru collapses to the ground, completely spent. His system window flashes, showing his fatigue is at a brutal 81. Still, he's relieved. That last lightning bolt was an unexpected power up, but the results speak for themselves. His stats got a nice little boost, which actually helped his recovery. After his little power up, Subaru checks his account. He's sitting on over 20,000 credits, but it's still not enough to level up his main skill. He figures taking down the area boss should provide the necessary experience. To get the job done, he summons a glowing golden orb, which sends his livestream chat into a frenzy of confused questions. Even Subaru is surprised to find such a rare, disposable item this early on. Announcing that it's time to fight, a massive shadow monster with a single glowing eye erupts from the ground, terrifying the other nearby participants. The newly summoned boss, Giant King Gorog, decides to make an entrance. It immediately smacks down one of the other participants, a guy named Shu Hai, who promptly dissolves into a puddle of tears. He begs for mercy, screaming that nobody understands the true nature of this monster. Meanwhile, Gorog is having a moment. It scoffs at being called a god, wondering aloud if it's really being compared to inferior wretches. Apparently, this shadow monster has a serious ego problem and very high standards for its victims. While Gorog is busy with its villain monologue, the other participants are having a slightly less fun time. A veteran player, Dale, decides to play hero, ordering a younger guy named Peleus to evacuate the villagers, a noble sacrifice, really. Too bad it lasts about 2 seconds. Gorog casually swats Dale aside, ending his heroic career instantly. Peleus can only stare, paralyzed with fear. He quickly does the math and realizes they're toast. There's no victory, no escape, just a very large, very angry shadow monster blocking the exit. With his life on the line, Peleus pulls a genius move straight out of a cartoon. He asks the giant monster who's responsible for its family tragedy. As Gorog's attention shifts, Peleus points wildly, claiming the real culprit ran off to power up and finish the job. It's a desperate, last-ditch lie, and he's praying this mountain of muscle has a brain the size of a pea. For a glorious second, it looks like it worked until the monster deadpans a single, crushing word, lies. So much for that plan. The monster deadpans that Peleus's story has holes in it and demands an immediate answer. Before anyone can react, a nearby mountain erupts in a massive pillar of golden light, completely vaporizing one of the shadow creatures. Turns out our boy Subaru decided to stop spectating. He calmly announces this is the last one while his viewers lose their minds in the chat. They point out the boss is still growing, making this exam ridiculously unbalanced. But Subaru isn't fazed. He declares that he just needs to land one single hit. While everyone else is panicking, Subaru decides it's time for the main event. He begins to summon his signature move, the lightning spear, and golden energy immediately starts whipping around him. A system notification pops up confirming the skill is starting up, but there's a slight problem. The charge rate is painfully slow, barely hitting 33%. The immense power starts to overwhelm his new body, visibly injuring his hand. Subaru grimly confirms his suspicion. His current skill level is way too low to handle his old legendary gear. So much for a one-hit wonder. Subaru pushes through the pain as his fatigue skyrockets and the skill's charge rate barely crawls to 50%. His body is clearly not happy, but he grits his teeth and endures it. His livestream viewers, ever the comedians, joke that he must be getting a kick out of this. Meanwhile, the giant boss monster finally connects the dots. Realizing the glowing human across the way is the one who offed its son, it completely ignores the knight it was about to flatten and launches itself directly at Subaru, leaving Peleus utterly confused. Peleus, bless his heart, tries to get the monster's attention back, screaming that he's the real opponent. But the boss monster couldn't care less and just leaps right over the entire welcoming committee of knights. It lands with a thud and gets all sentimental, mourning its son Padel. The grief quickly morphs into pure rage. It vows to return that pain 1,000-fold, its hair flashing white as it bulks up. With glowing red eyes, the enraged monster makes it very clear who's about to get the beating of a lifetime. The enraged monster becomes a literal blur of white and blue, rocketing towards Subaru with a furious roar. But our guy is the picture of calm, holding his half-charged lightning spear like it's just another Tuesday. He coolly calculates the odds at 50-50. His livestream chat, however, is losing its collective mind, pointing out the obvious: if he misses, he's toast. Subaru accepts the all or nothing gamble. He has one final, chilling piece of advice for everyone watching this unfold. Don't look. With a giant angry monster about to turn him into a pancake, Subaru's mind flashes back to some old-school advice. A voice from his past tells him to ditch all the textbook nonsense. Forget predicting the enemy's moves, forget the spear's weight, and definitely stop worrying about throwing in a straight line. The only rule that mattered was to never, ever take his eyes off the target. The reason was simple, he wasn't some run-of-the-mill spearman. He was Narugami Subaru, and that's all he needed to know. As the lightning spear charges to 95%, Subaru recalls his old mentor's final piece of advice. He wasn't going to be throwing a F-normal spear, so the normal rules didn't apply. Back in reality, the enraged monster barrels toward him, ready to turn him into a permanent crater. His livestream chat is absolutely losing it, screaming at him to stop hesitating and just throw the spear already. But Subaru ignores the peanut gallery. His focus locked on the approaching boss's golden energy crackles around him. He's playing a different game entirely. With the monster's claws just inches from his face, a system window flashes. Initialization is complete. Talk about waiting until the last second. In a massive surge of power, Subaru finally makes his move. The enraged beast barrels forward, ready to end this, but it's far too late. He doesn't just throw the spear, he launches it. A blinding streak of black and gold lightning rips through the air, shooting straight toward the charging boss. This wasn't a desperate gamble, it was a perfectly timed execution. The lightning spear streaks across the room, a blur of pure power. The enraged monster throws up a hand in a last-ditch effort to defend itself, which is about as effective as trying to stop a bullet train with a wet noodle. The spear slams directly into the beast's face, and a silent eruption of black and gold energy completely engulfs its head. There's no dramatic final roar. 1 second the monster is there, the next it's just gone. Talk about total overkill. The golden spear doesn't just hit, it goes supernova. A blinding explosion of light completely erases the boss monster from existence. No dramatic roar, no final struggle, just poof, gone. As the last embers fade, Subaru lands gracefully, not even a hair out of place. As if he just took out the trash, he quietly utters the monster's name in a final, almost bored, farewell. His livestream chat, however, is anything but calm. A single viewer's comment pops up, summing up the collective shock. I live to see this. The system practically throws a party, showering Subaru with notifications. He defeated the seed that swallowed lightning and got a nice little cocktail of stat boosts and achievement points. But the real prize is a glowing item he identifies as the Heart of Thunder. Before he can pocket his loot, the item flashes violently. Suddenly, Subaru is yanked into a strange purple space, a shadowy figure looming behind him. A bizarre power floods his body, leaving him struggling and completely blindsided by whatever is happening. This definitely wasn't in the raid guide. Subaru finds himself completely paralyzed, unable to even speak. To make matters worse, his system starts spamming him with the same creepy message. An unknown entity is staring at him. Behind him, the shadowy figure just looms there, giving off major stalker vibes. Instead of panicking, Subaru wonders if this mysterious being is trying to communicate. But before he can get an answer, the entire purple dimension collapses into a swirl of light. He's abruptly transported to a desolate, rocky cliffside under a vast, empty sky, leaving him totally bewildered. The system helpfully informs Subaru he can use his new toy, the Heart of Thunder, to find clues in a nearby village. Before he can even process that, he checks his livestream. His viewers are already roasting him, convinced he fainted again. But their sarcasm is drowned out by a flood of donations celebrating his victory. His chat begs him to continue. But Subaru just isn't feeling it. He vaguely mumbles about being tired and, to the absolute fury of his new fans, promptly ends the stream. Immediately, a new voice asks if that was a good idea. The woman who called him out notes that he didn't even glance at the stream numbers. Subaru, a true master of modern technology, face palms. He confesses he had no clue he could even turn that feature off. Thinking fast, he plays it off as a genius marketing tactic. He declares he'll check the massive donation rewards air with his fans on the next stream to build suspense. Impressed by his quick thinking, the woman realizes he's a natural at this. She stands, ready to make him an offer he simply can't refuse. The scene cuts to a fancy, sunlit room where a woman tells her masked companion to check out a guy named Hawkeye on stream. He pulls up a feed of a loud, blonde dude analyzing Subaru's exam for over 9,000 viewers. This streamer even has the guts to joke about being the real Narukami. The masked man explains that while everyone else was struggling through the test, Subaru decided to give himself the extra insane challenge of live streaming it. Hearing this, the woman is left completely speechless, blushing at his sheer audacity. Back on the stream, Hawkeye decides to wrap things up with a bombshell. He tells his massive audience that he can sum up the masked man in one sentence. He's literally the legendary Narugami. Cut to the present, where the woman who was just watching is now sitting with Subaru himself. Getting a little personal, she asks if he's doing all this for a reason beyond just money. Subaru's only response is a long, thoughtful which causes her to completely short-circuit and apologize for her stupid question. Subaru, ever the cool customer, tells the flustered woman it's fine, snapping back into business mode. She reveals a little secret. Hawkeye, the streamer who just exposed his identity, is signed to her Blue Sky agency. He's been their guy for 6 years. Then she drops the bombshell. Her agency wants to split all the money from Hawkeye's stream, and all future ones about him, right down the middle with Subaru. Ads, donations, the works. Stunned, Subaru asks if she's for real. She confirms it's a surprise bonus. The agency woman leans in with one final, flirty proposal, a collaboration stream with Hawkeye. Having heard enough business talk for one lifetime, Subaru promptly exits the meeting. Alone in his room, he facepalms, wondering if he even needed the mask in the first place. Staring at his reflection, he admits it's getting tough to know what to hide anymore. But who has time for an identity crisis? Shaking it off, he immediately spends a cool 40,000 credits to upgrade his Wedge of Greed skill. Priorities, people. After dropping a fortune on his skill upgrade, Subaru checks the price for the next level, a staggering 80,000 credits. His current balance? A sad 120. Looks like our boy is officially broke again. Meanwhile, Hatsuko is having a complete system failure on the bed. She's lost in a daydream where the mysterious masked Subaru warns her that digging into his secrets could get her hurt. She frantically promises not to ask, despite her curiosity. But when her fantasy, Subaru adds that meeting her has been great, that's what really sends her over the edge. Hatsuko is having a complete system rebooting meltdown on the bed, absolutely losing her mind over her little fantasy chat with Subaru. She flails around with so much enthusiasm that she literally beats the stuffing out of her pillow, sending a storm of feathers flying everywhere. In her love-struck haze, she gushes about how Narugami Subaru is this super mysterious guy that nobody truly knows. And the best part, she's convinced he's even cooler in person. While she has the fangirl moment of a lifetime, the scene dramatically shifts to a spooky mansion under a full moon. Inside a gothic-looking mansion, a flashy analyst declares that one line is enough for his report. Elsewhere, Kurokawa Amon, a ridiculously muscular guy from the Blue Zone Guild, is in the middle of an intense workout. He complains about some new streamer, griping about their speaking style, and even bragging that he tried streaming once too. His associate cuts him off, telling him to forget about Hawkeye for a minute. The real person he should be keeping an eye on, he insists, is the one and only Narugami Subaru. Amon scoffs, dismissing Subaru as just some fake who claims he learned thunder. His associate, however, brings up a quote from Sako Shoai, one of the original Blue Eyes legends. To his surprise, Amon recalls the quote word for word. He explains they were obsessed with the old legends, studying everything about them, right down to the way they breathed. His partner then drops a truth bomb. People always forget that the Blue Eyes Guild wasn't a one-man show. Every single one of its members was considered the strongest in their field. Amon's partner adds a chilling detail: the deaths of the original Blue Eyes members were super shady. Amon, however, is too busy getting triggered by the stream. He calls Subaru a flashy idiot for acting so familiar and rants that streamers will sell their souls for views. His partner shuts off the TV, and when Amon demands to know why he showed him that garbage, the guy nervously admits their boss, Kyojo, ordered it. This definitely gets Amon's attention. Outside, some hired goons get ready, believing the new streamer will do anything for cash. Two men in black suits wheel a covered cart into the room. With a dramatic flourish, one of them rips the sheet off, revealing an absurd amount of shiny gold bars. The boss, looking entirely too smug, declares the budget is set. His order is simple: bring Subaru to him, no matter what it takes. Meanwhile, Amon's intense workout comes to a grinding halt. He looks completely dumbfounded, unable to process that his boss thinks this legendary figure is just another money freak who can be bought so easily. The scene flashes back to the chaotic aftermath of a huge battle. Amidst the rubble, a blonde warrior in full plate armor is shouting orders like a seasoned commander. He demands the injured be gathered, with the most critical cases getting top priority while potions are passed to the lightly wounded. But just as he's in the zone, the memory glitches. He snaps back to reality, looking totally lost. Someone asks how he feels, explaining that he collapsed just outside the village. Still reeling, the man just clutches his head, complaining that he's dizzy. The very enthusiastic Peleus tells him to ask away. Finding the guy's energy kind of endearing, Subaru thinks to himself what a good boy he is before ending the conversation. His stream chat, meanwhile, is an absolute circus, with one viewer joking that it's time to put poor Peleus out of his misery. Subaru then checks his reward, revealing a unique card called the Hunter Thunder Heart. It massively boosts thunder attack and resistance. Stunned, he wonders if it's for real. After a moment of suspense for his viewers, Subaru grins. The stats are perfect. This thing is crazy good. Subaru clenches his fist, still buzzing from his legendary drop. Suddenly, a fruit basket appears at his door, a gift from a mysterious admirer. His chat, being the internet trolls they are, immediately spams theories about a boyfriend visit. But Subaru is lost in thought, realizing the old legends about this item were actually true. We flash back to the moment it happened. An excited Peleus explains that he saw a brilliant light coming from the giant's remains. He holds up the glowing crystal, calling it a Thunder Heart, leaving Subaru completely stunned. Subaru presses Peleus for more information, but the guy hits him with a confident, "Nope, not a clue." Faced with Subaru's silent judgment, and possibly the sheer intimidation of his puppy print pajamas, Peleus gets flustered. He quickly clarifies that he only knows a couple of old legends. The first is a classic: a god used thunder to take down a giant. The second tale is a bit spicier: gods and giants apparently had a full-blown war over the power of thunder itself. He finishes his story by revealing that the giants lost. Shocking. Subaru connects the dots. This legendary gem wasn't some random monster drop, it was intentionally created. While the old tales are conveniently fuzzy on who exactly made it, the reason why is suddenly crystal clear. He envisions the epic, world-shaking conflict between gods and giants. This thunder heart wasn't just a relic of that war, it was humanity's trump card. It was a weapon forged specifically so that mere mortals could fight back against impossible beings and actually win. A surge of power seems to crackle around him as this reality sets in. Just as Subaru pieces together the epic lore of the Thunder Heart, the system decides he's done for the day. A notification declares the Thunder Trial cleared, and he's immediately being warped to Layer 3. This leaves a very confused Peleus talking to an empty chair, wondering what just happened. One minute he's telling ancient legends, the next his audience has vanished. Subaru, meanwhile, makes a grand entrance, materializing in a brilliant pillar of golden light in the middle of a bustling city plaza in Ortonale, the tower's third layer. Subaru's grand entrance is met with mixed reviews. His live stream chat goes wild, but a couple of locals are completely unimpressed. One guy scoffs at what he assumes is another Narukami cosplay, wondering aloud when the trend will finally die. Meanwhile, a fan gifts 1,000 credits, asking how it feels to reach Layer 3. Subaru takes a moment, knowing the big reveal is coming. He pulls off his mask, revealing the unmistakable face of the genuine Lord of Thunder for all to see. Before Subaru can even enjoy the chaos he's caused, a familiar face approaches. It's Reincarnation, an awakened combatant who, in Subaru's memory, was notoriously unapproachable. Apparently, 20 years has softened her up a bit. She gets surprisingly close, explaining she got separated from her party and asks if he's seen her friend. Without a clue who she's talking about, Subaru just points in a random direction. To his surprise, she buys it completely, thanking him with way too much enthusiasm before running off. Another mystery for another day. Just as Subaru is processing that bizarre encounter, Reincarnation sprints back, popping up beside him with zero personal space. Apparently, she completely misunderstood his vague pointing and now thinks they're heading in the same direction. Before he can correct her, she eagerly suggests they team up. Subaru, looking utterly done with this turn of events, just agrees, claiming he's got nothing better to do anyway. The simple confirmation sends Reincarnation into a state of pure, fang-bearing delight, and she happily trots along behind her ridiculously strong and very confused new travel buddy. As Subaru walks with his bizarrely cheerful new companion, he gets hit with a chilling flashback. The memory is of his final, grim moments, masked and betrayed by the very person he trusted most. Snapping back to the present, he decides he's had enough public exposure for one day. He calmly pulls out his device and, with a simple tap, ends the live stream. The legendary Narukami Subaru has officially left the building, leaving his viewers hanging and his new partner completely oblivious to his inner turmoil.